My daughter called at midnight sobbing. She said, "Mom, Vincent says if you really loved me, you'd transfer the Vineyard deed to show you accept our marriage. Everyone's families do this." I told her of course I'd handle it right away. 4 days later, I gave them a housewarming gift that resulted in Vincent being dragged away in federal handcuffs while my daughter watched in horror. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know if you think I went too far. Let me tell you exactly what I discovered about my son-in-law. Because this whole nightmare didn't start with that manipulative midnight call. It started 3 years ago when my successful architect daughter brought home a man who turned out to be the FBI's most wanted financial predator. I'm Eleanor, 69 years old, a retired federal judge, and until 3 days ago, I thought I knew my daughter. We used to talk every day. She'd call during her lunch break and we'd chat about everything and nothing. Legal cases, the latest documentaries, her dating disasters. When she met Vincent, I was genuinely happy for her. She deserved someone who appreciated her brilliant mind and ambitious spirit. "Mom, he's different," she'd said that first night, practically glowing. "He really understands my vision." I'd prepared my signature Coke au vin, the one Sophia had been requesting since she was 14. Vincent arrived in a custom Armani suit, carrying rare orchids and compliments about my Tudor estate in Napa Valley. He was handsome in that polished way that usually made me suspicious. But Sophia was so happy, I pushed my doubts aside. During dinner, he asked thoughtful questions about my judicial career and seemed genuinely interested in my landmark civil rights cases. He complimented the wine pairing, helped clear the table, and even offered to organize the dishwasher. Perfect gentleman behavior that should have been charming, but felt somehow rehearsed. "Your mother raised an extraordinary daughter," he told me as he hugged me goodbye. "You must be incredibly proud." I was proud. Sophia had a thriving architectural firm, owned a penthouse in downtown Portland, and had never needed to rely on anyone for anything. She was independent, driven, and visionary, everything I'd raised her to be. But that night, something nagged at me. Maybe it was the way he spoke about Sophia, like she was a trophy he'd acquired, or how he'd mentioned my magnificent vineyard estate 4 times during dinner. I owned a sprawling vineyard in Sonoma County that had been in my family for 25 years, a place where Sophia and I spent every harvest season together. "He's very interested in our traditions," I told my sister Catherine the next day. "That's wonderful, Eleanor. It means he wants to be part of the family." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But something about Vincent's perfect smile reminded me of my ex-husband, Marcus, Sophia's father. Marcus had that same charm, that same way of making you feel special until he decided you were no longer useful to him. Over the next few months, I watched Vincent slowly insert himself into every aspect of Sophia's life. He had opinions about her business partners, her projects, even her relationship with me. The daily phone calls became weekly, then monthly, then barely at all. "Vincent thinks I should focus more on our future together," Sophia explained when I asked why she seemed distant. "He says successful partnerships require complete alignment." That should have been my first red flag, but I told myself I was being overprotective. Sophia was 32, perfectly capable of making her own decisions. If she was happy, I should be happy for her. But then came the engagement party I wasn't invited to. I found out about Sophia's engagement the same way strangers did, through LinkedIn. A photo of her left hand wearing a massive 8-carat emerald ring with a caption, "Said yes to forever. Building our empire together." 127 likes and counting. Comments from colleagues and friends congratulating her. Not one of them asking where her mother was, because most of them had probably assumed I already knew. I stared at that photo for 15 minutes, my morning coffee growing cold as I tried to process what I was seeing. My daughter was engaged and I'd learned about it from social media. I called her immediately. "Oh my God, Mom. I'm so sorry." Sophia's voice was breathless, excited. "It just happened last night, and we were so caught up in the moment. Vincent surprised me at 11 Madison Park, and then we went back to his penthouse and called his parents. And it got so late, and I was going to call you this morning. I swear." "Congratulations, sweetheart." I forced warmth into my voice. Tell me everything.
And she did.
For 30 minutes, she gushed about the proposal, the ring, how romantic it all was, how Vincent's parents had immediately started planning an engagement party at their private club in the Hamptons, how they were thinking of a summer wedding. When's the engagement party? I asked. There was a pause. Next Saturday. It's going to be intimate, just immediate family and a few key associates. Should I plan to fly out Friday night? Another pause. Longer this time. Mom, about that. Vincent's family has very specific protocols for these events. His father is quite traditional and he's planned everything according to their customs. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What does that mean, Sophia? It means, well, it's really just for Vincent's side of the family and a few of our mutual business contacts. It's not that you're not important. It's just that they have this way of doing things and Vincent thinks it's better if we respect that. Vincent thinks. Everything had become about what Vincent thinks. I see. I kept my voice carefully neutral. And what do you think? I think Vincent understands his family better than I do, and I want to start off on the right foot with them. You understand, right? We'll do something special, just the three of us soon. That was 8 months ago. We never did anything special, just the three of us. The wedding planning happened around me, not with me. Sophia would mention details in passing. They'd found a venue, hired a celebrity planner, chosen exclusive vendors. But when I offered to help or asked about specific plans, I was met with vague responses about how Vincent's handling most of it or his mother has connections. 4 months ago, I asked about the date so I could clear my calendar. We're thinking mid-September, Sophia said. Probably the third weekend. Vincent's researching venues in the Hamptons. That sounds lovely. September in New York is beautiful. Are you thinking of having it at the Vineyard? I could arrange for the entire estate to be available. Oh no, Mom. Vincent wants something more prestigious, more sophisticated than a backyard vineyard wedding. The dismissal stung more than I expected. Sophia had always loved our vineyard. As a child, she declared she wanted to get married there someday, barefoot among the vines with lanterns strung between the oak trees. Of course, I said, whatever makes you happy. But I wasn't invited to the venue tours. I wasn't asked about the guest list. I wasn't included in the dress shopping trips that Sophia posted about on Instagram, Vincent's mother beaming beside her in every photo. I was becoming a spectator in my own daughter's life. The final blow came exactly 3 weeks ago. Sophia called while I was reviewing legal briefs in my study, a mundane Thursday evening task that would be forever marked in my memory as the moment everything changed. Mom, I need to discuss something with you, and I need you to approach this rationally. Nothing good ever followed that phrase, but I took a deep breath and set down my papers. What is it, sweetheart? Vincent's been consulting with some family therapists about healthy boundaries in marriage. He thinks it's really important that we establish our independence as a couple from the very beginning. I felt that familiar chill. What kind of independence? Well, he pointed out that I've been emotionally dependent on you for most of my life, like calling you when I'm stressed about work instead of discussing things with my partner. He thinks that might create conflicts in our marriage. Sophia, talking to your mother when you're stressed isn't unhealthy. It's normal. But is it? Vincent showed me some research about women who prioritize their mothers over their husbands and how that destroys marriages. I don't want to be that wife, Mom. I closed my eyes, recognizing the manipulation for what it was. Vincent was isolating Sophia from her support system, and he was making her believe it was for her own good. What does this mean practically? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. It means we need to establish some boundaries. Less frequent contact, more space for Vincent and me to build our own legacy. She hesitated. Vincent thinks it would be healthier if we spent the holidays with his family this year, just to break the pattern of dependence. The holidays. We'd spent every Christmas together since Marcus left. It was our tradition, our time. Sophia would fly up from Portland on Christmas Eve, and we'd stay in our pajamas until noon, drinking champagne and opening presents like she was still 14 years old. I see. My voice sounded strange, distant. Anything else? Actually, yes. Vincent thinks the Vineyard situation is complicated. What about the Vineyard? Well, I've always assumed I'd inherit it someday. But Vincent pointed out that puts pressure on our relationship. Like he feels like he can never truly be himself there because it's not really ours. It's yours. And if something happened between us and you, we'd lose our retreat. I gripped the phone tighter. Are you asking me to transfer the estate to you? Not exactly. Vincent thinks it would be better if we just found our own place, somewhere that's truly ours. He doesn't want to feel like he's constantly being evaluated when we're supposed to be relaxing. Being evaluated by me, the woman who'd barely seen him in the past year. Sophia, that Vineyard has been in our family for 25 years. It's where you learned about wine, where we've made countless memories together. I know, Mom, and I treasure those memories. But I'm starting a new legacy now with Vincent, and he needs to feel like we have our own special places. Our own special places. Places that didn't include me. I ended that conversation with promises to think about everything and respect their need for space. But inside, I was already planning. Not revenge, not yet. But I was going to find out exactly who Vincent really was and what he wanted from my daughter. It took me exactly 10 days of careful investigation and a few phone calls to Sophia's college friends to piece together Vincent's pattern. Sophia wasn't his first wealthy, accomplished girlfriend. There was Isabella, whose family owned a successful tech company. She'd also been isolated from her family before their engagement was called off when her uncle discovered Vincent's cocaine addiction and gambling debts. And before Isabella, there was Charlotte, whose trust fund Vincent had tried to access before her attorney brothers intervened. Vincent Blackwood wasn't just controlling. He was a predator who specialized in intelligent, successful women with generational wealth. And Sophia, with her thriving business and expectation of inheriting valuable wine country property, was his latest mark. But there was something else I discovered. Something that changed everything. Vincent's younger brother, David Blackwood, had been one of the defendants in a massive fraud case I'd presided over 8 years ago. A case where Vincent had been the mastermind behind a Ponzi scheme that bilked elderly investors out of $47 million. David had taken the fall, but I'd always suspected there was a bigger fish involved. Now I knew who it was. That's when I started planning my wedding gift with the help of an old colleague. The new player, Special Agent Rebecca Chun. Special Agent Rebecca Chun of the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit had been tracking Vincent for 3 years. When I reached out through my federal connections, she revealed that Vincent was suspected in multiple financial fraud cases across 4 states, but they'd never been able to build a solid case against him. Your daughter might be our best chance to finally bring him down, Agent Chun told me during our clandestine meeting at a coffee shop in San Francisco. But we need evidence of current criminal activity, not just suspicions. What kind of evidence? Recorded confessions. Financial documents. Proof that he's actively planning to defraud your daughter. That's when Agent Chun revealed the most shocking detail. Vincent hadn't just stumbled upon wealthy women to target. He had a partner, a corrupt private investigator named Malcolm Rivers who provided detailed financial profiles of potential victims, including their family assets, inheritance expectations, and psychological vulnerabilities. We've been watching Rivers for months, Agent Chun explained. He's been feeding Vincent intelligence on dozens of wealthy women across the country. Your daughter was specifically selected based on a 40-page psychological and financial profile. The phone call that changed everything came 3 days ago on a Wednesday morning while I was tending to my prize-winning roses. Sophia's name appeared on my phone screen, and for a split second I felt that old surge of joy before remembering how things stood between us now. Hi, Mom. Her voice was different. Flat, mechanical. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? I'm calling to let you know that Vincent and I got married yesterday. It was a small ceremony, just immediate family and our closest associates. I stopped breathing. Yesterday? But I thought you were having a wedding in September. We decided to do something more exclusive. Vincent felt like a big wedding was too much exposure, too commercial. We found a beautiful private estate in Martha's Vineyard and kept it intimate. Intimate and secret, apparently. Congratulations. I managed. I'm sure it was beautiful. It was perfect. Really. Vincent's parents were there and his sister flew in from Switzerland. My friend Jessica was my maid of honor and Vincent's business partner Tom was his best man. The photographer got some amazing shots. She was listing off details like she was reading from a press release, not describing the happiest day of her life. But what struck me most was what she wasn't saying. That sounds lovely, Sophia. I'm happy for you. Thanks. Oh, and Mom, Vincent and I were wondering if you could send us the keys to the vineyard. We're thinking of spending our honeymoon there since we didn't have time to plan a proper trip abroad. There it was. The real reason for the call. Not to share her joy with her mother, not to include me in this major life milestone, but to ask for access to property they'd already decided should be theirs. The keys to the vineyard, I repeated slowly.
Right.
Vincent's really excited to experience it. I've told him so much about it over the years. He's particularly interested in the wine collection and the property's investment potential. Investment potential. How romantic. Sophia, when you say you got married yesterday, do you mean you had a ceremony or do you mean you're legally married?
Both.
We got the license last week and had the ceremony yesterday.
Why?
Just clarifying. And you didn't think to invite your mother to your wedding. There was a pause. Mom, please don't make this dramatic. It was Vincent's decision to keep it exclusive and honestly, after everything we discussed regarding boundaries, I thought you'd understand. I understood perfectly. And I did. I understood that my daughter had married a man who had convinced her that excluding her own mother from her wedding was healthy. I understood that Vincent had succeeded in his plan to isolate Sophia from the one person who might have protected her from him. So you'll send the keys? We're hoping to drive up this Friday. Of course, sweetheart. I'll make sure you get them. After I hung up, I sat in my garden for a long time, staring at my roses and thinking about justice. Vincent followed patterns. He isolated women from their families, convinced them to give him access to their assets, and then probably moved on when he'd gotten what he wanted or when someone started asking too many questions. But Vincent had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed I was just another helpless mother who would quietly accept being cut out of her daughter's life. He'd underestimated what happens when you corner a federal judge who spent 30 years putting criminals behind bars. I spent the rest of that day making phone calls and coordinating with Agent Chen. By evening, I had everything I needed to give Vincent exactly what he deserved. Not revenge, really. Justice. Cold, calculated, federal justice. The wedding gift I was planning would be far more valuable than anything Sophia might find on her registry. It would be the gift of truth, served with the full weight of federal law enforcement. I've always believed that the best gifts are the ones that change lives forever. When I drove to Sophia and Vincent's penthouse that Friday morning, I made sure my wedding present would provide lasting consequences. The package was elegantly wrapped in black paper with a platinum ribbon. Inside was a leather portfolio containing several items that I'd spent the past 72 hours carefully assembling with Agent Chen's help. Vincent was going to love learning about his new family connections, particularly his relationship with the federal justice system. I left it outside their door with a note. Congratulations on your marriage. Every new husband should understand his legal obligations to his wife's family. With love and justice, Eleanor. Then I went home and waited. The call came at 2:47 p.m. Sophia's number, but Vincent's voice, and he was screaming. What the hell is wrong with you? You psychotic old witch. How dare you send us this garbage? I set down my tea gently. Hello, Vincent. I take it you opened your wedding gift. This isn't funny. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. I couldn't help but smile. I'm confused, dear. What exactly would you report? That your mother-in-law gave you a wedding gift containing federal subpoenas and arrest warrants. In the background, I could hear Sophia crying. Vincent, calm down. Let me talk to her. No, this woman is insane. She's trying to destroy our marriage before it even starts. Vincent, I said calmly, surely you're not upset about me sharing some interesting legal documentation. I thought you'd appreciate knowing about the federal investigation into your business activities. The truth was, Agent Shen and I had delivered something far more devastating than family history. The portfolio contained federal subpoenas for Vincent's financial records, arrest warrants for both Vincent and Malcolm Rivers, and most importantly, recorded conversations between Vincent and Rivers discussing Sophia's acquisition timeline and plans to liquidate her assets within 6 months of marriage. But the crown jewel was a federal seizure order for all of Vincent's assets, executed simultaneously as he was opening the gift. While he was screaming at me on the phone, federal agents were already freezing his accounts, seizing his penthouse, and arresting Malcolm Rivers. "You're lying," he said, but his voice had changed. The rage was gone, replaced by something that sounded distinctly like terror. "I never lie, dear. I'm a retired federal judge. We're trained to be very precise about facts. But don't take my word for it. I'm sure Agent Chen will be happy to explain everything when she arrives." I heard Madison in the background asking what was happening, what agents I was talking about. "Oh, and Vincent, the Vineyard keys are in the portfolio too. Consider it my wedding gift to both of you. I'm sure you'll find the federal prison system very different from wine country." Then I hung up and poured myself another cup of tea. What I hadn't told Vincent was that Agent Chen's team had been conducting a coordinated operation across 4 states while I was delivering my gift. At exactly 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time, federal agents simultaneously arrested Malcolm Rivers in Las Vegas, seized Vincent's offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, and executed search warrants at 3 of his business locations. The web of evidence they'd been building for 3 years was finally complete, thanks to the recordings they'd obtained of Vincent discussing his Sophia project with Rivers. The conversations revealed not just his plans to defraud my daughter, but his involvement in a nationwide network that had bilked vulnerable women out of over $83 million. Sophia called me at 8:15 that evening. Her voice was hoarse from crying and I could hear sirens in the background. "Mom, what did you do?" I was sitting in my study, surrounded by the legal briefs I'd been reviewing to help Agent Chen build her case. "I gave you both a wedding gift, sweetheart. Did you read through everything?" "I read enough. Vincent says it's all lies, that you're trying to break us up." "What do you think, Sophia?" There was a long pause. I think I need you to explain some things. Federal agents really arrested someone named Malcolm Rivers. $83 million in documented fraud across 12 victims. Your husband was the mastermind of a sophisticated network that targeted successful women for financial exploitation. Another pause. And Vincent knew about this money? Sophia, Vincent didn't just know about it. He orchestrated it. The private investigator found detailed files on you dating back 2 years before you met. Vincent studied your business, your relationship with me, even your favorite restaurants before staging that accidental meeting. I could hear Vincent's voice getting closer to the phone, his words muffled but clearly desperate. "The federal seizure order includes all assets acquired through fraud," I continued. "That includes his penthouse, his cars, his art collection, and most importantly, the 8-carat engagement ring he bought with stolen money." "That's impossible. Vincent has a successful consulting firm. He specializes in mergers and acquisitions for tech companies." My heart broke a little for her. "Sophia, when's the last time you saw Vincent actually work? When's the last time he had a client meeting or took a business call or showed you a contract?" Silence. In the background, I could hear Vincent demanding that Sophia hang up the phone. The consulting firm was a front. Agent Chen has documented evidence that Vincent's only source of income for the past 5 years has been defrauding women like you. Agent Chen. FBI Financial Crimes Unit. She's been building this case for 3 years. Vincent married you 3 days after we provided them with the final evidence they needed. The timing wasn't coincidental, sweetheart. He was trying to establish spousal privilege before the arrests. Now I could hear Vincent clearly. He was telling Sophia that I was lying, that I was jealous of their happiness, that I was trying to destroy their marriage because I couldn't stand to see her successful. "Sophia," I said gently, "ask yourself this. If none of this is true, why is Vincent so panicked? If his business was legitimate, wouldn't he want to clear his name?" Wouldn't he be curious about getting justice for the women who were actually defrauded? The line went quiet except for the sound of Sophia breathing. There's something else, I continued. Agent Chen also found evidence of 2 other marriages. Vincent was legally married to both Isabella Chen and Charlotte Walsh when he proposed to you. Bigamy is a federal crime. Stop, Sophia whispered. The federal marshals have warrants for. I said stop. The line went dead. I set the phone down and looked out at the darkening sky. Tomorrow, Sophia would have to decide what to believe. Tomorrow, she would have to choose between the man who had isolated her from everyone who loved her and the truth that could set her free. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Vincent Blackwood was going to sleep in federal custody, knowing that his carefully constructed empire had been demolished by the very woman he'd tried to dismiss as an irrelevant old mother. And I was going to sleep better than I had in months, knowing that my daughter finally had all the information she needed to make the right choice. The next morning brought news that exceeded even my expectations. Vincent hadn't just been arrested, he'd attempted to flee the country using a false passport, only to be captured at San Francisco International Airport with $2.3 million in cash and a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands. Agent Chen called me personally to deliver the update. Your son-in-law made this much easier for us. Flight risk, attempted destruction of evidence, and possession of fraudulent documents just added another 10 years to his potential sentence. But the most satisfying call came from an unexpected source. Malcolm Rivers, Vincent's partner, had agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. He was providing detailed records of Vincent's entire operation, including psychological profiles of 47 different women across 8 states. Mrs. Hartwell, Agent Chen continued, I need you to know that your daughter wasn't just a random victim. According to Rivers' files, Vincent had been planning to target Sophia for over 2 years. He studied her business, her family relationships, even her college transcripts. This was a sophisticated long-term operation. Sophia didn't call back that day or the next. But on Sunday evening, I found her sitting in my vineyard, still wearing the same clothes from Friday. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair unwashed, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Tell me everything, she said without even saying hello. I opened a bottle of our finest Cabernet, a 1998 vintage we'd been saving for special occasion, and we sat among the vines as the sun set over Sonoma County. The same vines where she'd played as a child, where we'd planned her architectural career, where we'd shared 1,000 conversations about everything and nothing. Now, we were going to talk about how the man she'd married was a criminal mastermind. Vincent's in federal custody, she said, staring into her wine glass. Held without bail on charges of racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy. His lawyer says he could face 45 years in prison. The federal prosecutor called me this morning. They're treating this as organized crime due to the scope of the operation. Where did he go wrong, Mom? She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I mean, I'm educated, successful, supposed to be smart. How did I fall for it? I reached across and squeezed her hand. Because he was a professional sweetheart. This wasn't some amateur con artist. Vincent and his team had been perfecting this operation for years. They targeted your strengths and turned them against you. Agent Chen showed me my file yesterday. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. 43 pages documenting everything about my life. My business revenue, my relationship with you, my college roommates, even my favorite wine varietals. He knew everything about me before we ever met. And you had no way of knowing that. You met someone who seemed interested in the same things you were interested in, who seemed to understand your ambitions. That's not naivety, Sophia. That's being human. She was quiet for a long time, watching the sunset paint the sky over our vineyard. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. It was colder, more focused. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. I set down my wine glass. What is it? How long have you been working with the FBI? I considered my words carefully. I made contact with Agent Chen 6 weeks ago when my private investigation uncovered Vincent's connection to the fraud case I presided over years ago. 6 weeks ago. Right around the time I told you Vincent wanted me to establish boundaries with you. Yes. And you didn't try to warn me directly because you knew I wouldn't believe you. I met her eyes. Would you have? She shook her head slowly.
No.
I would have thought you were jealous or trying to interfere. Vincent had me so convinced that you were the problem. She paused, swirling her wine. How did you know to involve federal law enforcement? Because Vincent's brother David had been a defendant in my courtroom 8 years ago. When I realized the connection, I knew there had to be more to the story. But I also knew that if Vincent was as sophisticated as I suspected, state-level law enforcement wouldn't be enough. Sophia was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and sad. I was so cruel to you, Mom. I said horrible things. I excluded you from my own wedding because he convinced me it was healthy. Sophia, no. Let me finish. I chose a man I'd known for 3 years over the mother who sacrificed everything to raise me alone after Dad left. I believed his version of what family should look like instead of trusting my own experience with the strongest woman I know. I reached across the table and took her hand. You were manipulated by someone who had studied manipulation as a profession. That's not your fault. But I should have seen through him. I'm supposed to be intelligent, perceptive. How did I miss all the red flags? Because he was trained to hide them. Vincent didn't target weak people, sweetheart. He targeted successful, intelligent women because they had something he wanted. Your strength wasn't a weakness. It's what made you valuable to him. Sophia squeezed my hand. How do I make this right between us? You already have. You're here. You're safe. And you're free. That's all I ever wanted. We finished our wine and spent the evening walking through the vineyard. Sophia pointing out changes she'd noticed in the vines and asking me to tell her stories about our harvest traditions she'd forgotten. It felt like we were rebuilding something that had been systematically destroyed, vine by vine, memory by memory. That evening, as Sophia was getting ready to leave, she paused at the door. Mom, there's going to be a federal trial. Agent Chen says the prosecution wants me to testify about Vincent's manipulation tactics and how he isolated me from my support system. Are you going to do it? Sophia smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, it was the fierce, determined smile I remembered from her childhood. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to make sure Vincent Blackwood never has the opportunity to hurt another woman again. But more than that, I want him to understand exactly what kind of family he tried to destroy. What do you mean? Agent Chen told me that with my testimony and the evidence they've gathered, Vincent is looking at 45 years in federal prison. But there's also a civil forfeiture case where all of his victims can recover damages. She paused, her expression growing colder. Mom, Vincent stole 3 years of my life, my relationship with you, and my ability to trust my own judgment. But he made one crucial mistake. What's that? He thought he was targeting a naive architect with family money. What he actually targeted was the daughter of a federal judge who spent 30 years putting criminals exactly like him behind bars. And now, thanks to the evidence you helped gather, every single asset he acquired through fraud, including the money he spent on our fake relationship, belongs to his victims. That's my girl, I thought. Welcome back. The trial of the century. The trial began 8 weeks later, and it was everything I could have hoped for and more. Patricia Williams, the federal prosecutor, had built a case so comprehensive it read like a masterclass in white-collar crime prosecution. Vincent faced 47 federal charges including racketeering, conspiracy, mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, bigamy, and operating a criminal enterprise. But the most devastating charge was the new one: criminal conspiracy to commit organized fraud, which carried a mandatory minimum of 25 years. I sat in the gallery every day, watching my daughter testify with a dignity and precision that made me proud to be her mother. She spoke about the isolation, the manipulation, the way Vincent had convinced her to doubt her own instincts and sever ties with her family. She testified calmly and clearly, never breaking down, never letting emotion overwhelm the facts. But the most devastating testimony came from Malcolm Rivers, who had agreed to full cooperation in exchange for witness protection. Rivers detailed Vincent's entire operation with the clinical precision of a forensic accountant. Mr. Blackwood operated what we called the marriage mill, Rivers testified. We identified wealthy, successful women through social media, professional networks, and society publications. I would compile detailed psychological and financial profiles. Then Vincent would orchestrate elaborate, accidental meetings designed to exploit each woman's specific vulnerabilities. The prosecutor continued questioning. How many women were targeted through this operation? 47 documented cases over 8 years. Total financial damages exceeded $127 million. And Ms. Hartwell was part of this operation? Ms. Hartwell was what we called a premium target. Her architectural firm was valued at $8.3 million. She was set to inherit Vineyard property worth approximately $15 million, and her mother's judicial connections provided potential access to high-net-worth legal circles. I watched Sophia's face as she heard herself described as a commodity to be harvested. The pain in her eyes was terrible, but beneath it I saw something else.
Rage.
Pure, focused rage at the man who had studied her like a specimen in a laboratory. The prosecutor presented evidence of Vincent's surveillance of Sophia, including photographs taken outside her office, her gym, and even our vineyard. They showed detailed financial projections of what Vincent expected to extract from her over a 5-year timeline. But the most shocking revelation came when Agent Chen testified about Vincent's escape attempt. When we arrested Mr. Blackwood, he was carrying $2.3 million in cash and false identification documents. But more significantly, we found detailed plans for targeting 12 additional women, including complete surveillance files and what he called acquisition schedules. The defense attorney objected repeatedly, but the damage was done. The jury now understood that Vincent wasn't simply a man who had made poor choices. He was the mastermind of a criminal enterprise that had systematically destroyed the lives of nearly 50 women. When Vincent finally took the stand in his own defense, it was a disaster of epic proportions. The federal prosecutor, a brilliant woman named Rebecca Martinez, methodically dismantled every aspect of his testimony. Mr. Blackwood, you testified that you genuinely loved Ms. Hartwell. Is it your testimony that love includes conducting surveillance on someone for 2 years before meeting them? That's not what happened. I'm going to show you Exhibit 247. The prosecutor displayed a photograph of Sophia leaving her office, clearly taken with a telephoto lens. This photograph was found in your possession, Mr. Blackwood. It's dated 14 months before you claim to have met Ms. Hartwell accidentally at a coffee shop. How do you explain this? Vincent's composure cracked. That could be anyone. The metadata shows it was taken from the parking garage across from Ms. Hartwell's office building. We also found 127 similar photographs spanning 18 months. Is it your testimony that this is normal courtship behavior? The jury looked disgusted. Several were shaking their heads. But Martinez wasn't finished. Mr. Blackwood, let's talk about your financial situation. You claim to operate a successful consulting firm. Can you provide the jury with a single legitimate client contract from the past 5 years? My business arrangements were confidential.
I see.
So confidential that the IRS has no record of any business income reported by Vincent Blackwood or Blackwood Consulting LLC for the past 4 years. Vincent's face had gone pale. There were reporting delays. Reporting delays. Martinez's voice dripped with contempt. Mr. Blackwood, isn't it true that your only source of income for the past 5 years has been money stolen from the women you targeted? That's not true. Then explain this. She displayed a financial chart on the courtroom screens. This shows every deposit into your personal accounts from 2019 to 2024. Every single deposit can be traced to either Isabella Chen, Charlotte Walsh, or Sophia Hartwell. There is no other source of income. None. The courtroom was dead silent. Even Vincent's expensive defense attorney looked defeated. And Mr. Blackwood, when you were arrested at the airport, you had a one-way ticket to Grand Cayman, where you maintained offshore accounts containing $4.7 million in stolen funds. Is it your testimony that this was a vacation? I was exploring business opportunities. Business opportunities that required false passports and the liquidation of your wife's business assets without her knowledge? Vincent's jaw worked soundlessly. He had no answer. Martinez moved in for the kill. Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to read you something. These are text messages between you and Malcolm Rivers, sent 3 days before your arrest. She held up her phone and read, sign the power of attorney forms today. Start liquidating the Vineyard paperwork tomorrow. Should have enough to disappear before the old judge figures anything out. Did you send this message? Vincent slumped in his chair. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. A little late for that, Mr. Blackwood. The most satisfying verdict. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Not even an hour to dismantle a criminal enterprise that had taken 8 years to build. Guilty on all counts. The words echoed through the federal courtroom as Vincent Blackwood's empire of lies collapsed into dust. 47 counts, each one carrying significant prison time. But the sentencing hearing was where true justice was served. Federal Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to the story's earlier characters, was a stern woman with 30 years on the bench and zero tolerance for predators who targeted vulnerable women. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Mr. Blackwood, in my 3 decades as a federal judge, I have seen many criminals. Drug dealers, bank robbers, corporate executives who stole from pension funds. But you represent something particularly vile. You are a predator who systematically identified, studied, and destroyed successful women for no reason other than personal greed. Vincent stood shackled at the defendant's table, looking nothing like the polished manipulator who had charmed his way into Sophia's life. Prison had not been kind to him during the 6 months he'd spent awaiting trial. The evidence presented at trial shows that you operated a criminal enterprise specifically designed to exploit women's trust and destroy their family relationships. You didn't just steal money, Mr. Blackwood. You stole years of their lives, their ability to trust, their relationships with people who loved them. Judge Morrison paused, consulting her notes. The federal sentencing guidelines call for 25 to 30 years imprisonment. However, given the scope of your crimes, the number of victims, and your attempt to flee the country, this court is imposing the maximum possible sentence. She looked directly at Vincent. You are hereby sentenced to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole, to be followed by 10 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $127 million to your victims, plus interest and punitive damages totaling $89 million. Vincent's legs buckled. His attorney grabbed his arm to keep him upright. But Judge Morrison wasn't finished. Additionally, this court is imposing a lifetime ban on your access to social media, dating applications, and any form of online networking. Upon your eventual release, you will be prohibited from entering into any romantic relationship without prior approval from your probation officer and psychological evaluation. The judge's voice grew colder. Furthermore, given your history of targeting women through elaborate deception, this court is ordering that your name and photograph be placed on a federal registry of romance scammers, accessible to the public. Any woman you attempt to date will have immediate access to your criminal history. Vincent was sobbing now, his carefully constructed facade completely shattered. Finally, Mr. Blackwood, I want you to understand something. The women you targeted, including Ms. Hartwell, are not your victims. They are survivors. And survivors rebuild, while predators like you rot in cages. The beautiful aftermath. As the bailiffs led Vincent away in shackles, I felt a satisfaction deeper than any I'd experienced in my 30 years on the bench. This wasn't just about my daughter anymore. This was about 47 women who would finally have justice. But the most beautiful moment came during the victim impact statements. Sophia stood at the podium in a navy blue suit, looking every inch the successful architect she'd always been. But now she also looked like something else, a woman who had survived and emerged stronger. Vincent Blackwood didn't just steal money from me, she said, her voice steady and clear. He stole 3 years of my life, my relationship with my mother, and my ability to trust my own judgment. He convinced me that the people who truly cared about me were enemies while he systematically planned to rob me blind. She paused, looking directly at Vincent. But Vincent made a critical error in his calculations. He thought he was targeting a naive woman with family money. What he actually targeted was the daughter of a federal judge who spent 30 years putting criminals exactly like him behind bars. Vincent kept his eyes down, but I saw his shoulders shake. Vincent, I want you to understand something. Every day for the next 45 years, while you're sitting in a federal prison cell, I will be living the life you tried to steal from me. I will be building buildings that will stand for centuries. I will be maintaining the vineyard you coveted, but will never see again. And I will be cherishing the relationship with my mother that you tried so hard to destroy. Her voice grew harder. But most importantly, your conviction today means that no other woman will fall victim to your lies. And that knowledge will give me more satisfaction than any revenge ever could. As Sophia walked back to her seat, the entire courtroom erupted in applause. Even the federal marshals were clapping. 6 months after the trial, I received a call that made my week. Agent Chen informed me that Vincent's conviction had led to a massive federal investigation that uncovered an entire network of romance scammers operating across 12 states. 43 additional arrests had been made, and the FBI estimated they'd prevented over $200 million in future fraud. Mrs. Hartwell, Agent Chen said, your decision to contact federal law enforcement when you did probably saved dozens of women from becoming victims. Vincent was just one node in a much larger network. But the most satisfying call came from an unexpected source. Emma Chun, no relation to Agent Chen, Vincent's former victim, had reached out to thank me personally. Mrs. Hartwell, I just wanted you to know that watching Vincent get convicted gave me closure I never thought I'd have. For years, I blamed myself for falling for his lies. Seeing him exposed as the criminal he really is helped me understand that I wasn't stupid. I was targeted by a professional. Emma had used the restitution money from Vincent's conviction to start a non-profit organization dedicated to helping women who'd been victims of romance scams. She'd named it the Eleanor Foundation in my honor. 1 year after Vincent's conviction, Sophia and I were sitting on the deck of our vineyard, watching the sunset over Sonoma County. She'd moved back from Portland, deciding to establish a new branch of her architectural firm in wine country. We were closer than we'd ever been. Mom, she said, sipping a glass of our 2019 Pinot Noir, I have something to tell you. I raised an eyebrow. What's that, sweetheart? I met someone. My heart skipped a beat. Oh. His name is Michael. He's a pediatric surgeon at UCSF. We met at a charity fundraiser for children's cancer research. She smiled. And before you ask, yes, I had Agent Chen run a background check on him. Clean as a whistle. I laughed. I wasn't going to ask, but I'm glad you did. There's something else, Sophia continued. He wants to meet you. Actually, he insists on it. He says any man who wants to date me needs to understand that my mother is the most important person in my life, and he wants your approval before we get serious. I felt tears sting my eyes. He sounds wonderful.
He is. And Mom.
Sophia grinned. He absolutely loves the idea of getting married here at the vineyard. Barefoot in the sand, with lanterns strung between the oak trees, just like I always dreamed. As we sat there watching the sun set over our family vineyard, I thought about Vincent Blackwood, probably sitting in his federal prison cell, contemplating the next 44 years of his sentence. I thought about the 47 women whose lives he'd tried to destroy, and how many of them were now rebuilding stronger than ever. But mostly, I thought about justice. Real justice. Cold, calculated, federal justice served by women who refused to be victims. Vincent had targeted the wrong family. He'd underestimated what happens when you threaten a federal judge's daughter. And now he was paying the price, one day at a time, for the next 4.5 decades. Some wedding gifts really do keep on giving. And the gift of justice, once delivered, can never be returned. Today, I received a letter from Vincent Blackwood in federal prison. After 5 years of silence, he'd finally written to apologize. The letter was 7 pages long, filled with remorse and pleas for forgiveness. I read it once, then walked to my fireplace and burned it. Some people deserve forgiveness. Others deserve exactly what they got. Vincent Blackwood got justice. Cold, beautiful, permanent justice. And that's exactly what he deserved. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.